nothing was ever really built from the ground up for trading.
Meet Robert Sagurton, co-founder of Fogo Chain and veteran of Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and Jump Crypto. With over 20 years in global finance, he's now building the fastest, most composable Layer 1 designed for on-chain trading.
After launch, we go into deal mode.
Robert's mission? To bring institutional-grade performance to DeFi and ignite the future with Fogo.
We don't want to just be a lesser version of what's out there.
Welcome to a new segment, a chat with the founder. My name is Seb Montgomery, and today I'm chatting with Robert Sagurton, aka Sags. Sags, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Seb.
My pleasure. Now, before we jump in, I'd love to ask you quite a few questions because I'm personally getting DMs for people asking more and more about Fogo Chain, and they want to know the man behind it or one of the men behind it. Now, just a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this episode is financial advice. All we're doing is just having a chat. There are opinions, the opinions from myself or the guest. They're solely that. They're just opinions. Do your own research with all of your own investment strategies. Let's jump into this episode. All right. So, Sags, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got started on building Fogo Chain?
Yes. So I'm a co-founder of Fogo Chain, and my background is actually in traditional finance. So I worked in banks and TradFi exchanges my whole life. Always in foreign exchange. So started out one of the first electronic foreign exchange platforms. So this was like when FX was mostly done like on the phone and like between like these like very kind of archaic like terminals. And yeah, so we built one of the first electronic foreign exchange trading platforms. And when that happened, obviously the HFT companies got very interested because now they can access those markets electronically. So I started covering HFTs, people like Jump, and we can talk about how that came full circle later.
Sure.
And yeah, and that's actually where I met a lot of my current partners. So I worked with Jimmy Riley at JP Morgan, who's now the head of the Fogo Foundation. Martine Bond she was running the team. She's now a director in the Fogo Foundation. And we were together at JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and State Street. And then also at Morgan Stanley, there was this young guy, a young up-and-coming FX guy named Mike Cahill, who was on the FX desk while we were in prime brokerage. And I got to know Mike, and we became really good friends. So yeah, worked in TradFi and foreign exchange, prime brokerage, trading, futures clearing, like many years in all of those places. And then in 2013, one of my FX clients, who was like always ahead of the game, came in and told me about Bitcoin. And that was the first time I heard about it. And he was like super bullish. And it was the kind of guy that like every time he had an idea, it's like you just had to like, go along with it. And so I did. So I like just started learning as much as I could, bought some, and just got more and more interested in crypto. And that was the start of it. I actually left banking then, and just was independently researching as much as I could, and that's how it all got started.
Awesome. So then you worked for Jump.
Yeah, actually, so my first, the other interesting part about these two, it was actually two guys who kind of made me aware of what they were doing in crypto. They also were very early in Ripple, and I remember sitting with one of them in his conference room, and he was an ex foreign exchange guy, and I remember him telling me like, "Hey, I'm a XRP billionaire. Like, if that thing is ever worth anything," and we were like laughing, like, yeah, because like at that point, like no coin had really taken off. So to think that a coin could actually like be worth something was like crazy, and he had gotten in with the Ripple team like real early, on like the, I guess, market making and trading side, and he had a bunch of this stuff that was worthless. It became, I should follow up with him now and see when he sold it, if he sold it. But so yeah, so early days, I was kind of exposed to a bunch of those new projects, new exchanges, like Bitstamp was the other exchange in Europe, and I remember like flying out there to visit those guys when it was just a few guys. And then actually before Jump, I did a stint at R3, and this was kind of really focused on blockchains for like banking. And actually, R3 is now just partnered with Solana, and so they're going to be on Solana. This is public information. Um, and yeah, had a really great time. I mean, I kind of learned about the aspects of blockchains and like what an oracle was, for example. And I was the country manager for Brazil for R3. So moved down to Brazil. We had some really good investors, excuse me, and clients. And yeah, so we had a couple of the big banks. We had the big exchange in Brazil, and they were really committed to kind of building the core to blockchain together with R3. So got some real good experience there. And then at that point, Jump reached out to me because I had covered them, and they said, "Hey, we're looking to start an OTC desk." And so I left Brazil in the warm summer and went to cold Chicago to work on this building out an OTC desk for Jump. And actually, we actually pivoted pretty shortly after, but that's how I got started at Jump.
So you left the warmth of Brazil to go to the cold Chicago. It sounds like you're the right person to go after the right opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I should say at Jump, I was exposed to pretty much every project. 2017 to 2023, it was like a lot happened, good and bad, and we were, like close to most of it. So it was awesome, and like Jump's is just a great place. Like they really kind of just embraced all of the innovation that was happening, and they kind of reinvented themselves from just traders to real builders. I mean, if you look at like all they've built in this space, it's crazy. And so, I was close to that. And, Mike also brought in Mike Cahill. And then he kind of just took their role to the next level, got very involved in Pyth, obviously, and became a leader there. Um, and and yeah, so as kind of some things started to change in my personal life, I decided to leave on very good terms, and I moved out of the U.S. And then I was just advising for projects, so I really had no intention to be a founder or start an L1. And along the way, I started kind of looking around, and this came from my experience when I was at Jump when we tried to trade on different blockchains. And I just realized like these chains really weren't built for trading. Um, like I think the evolution was, like Bitcoin came out and everyone was like, wow, this is really cool, but it's just too slow and expensive for like trading or transactions. So then like Ethereum was like a faster, cheaper version of Bitcoin, but that still really wasn't suited for trading. And then Solana was like a faster, cheaper version of Ethereum, and that became suitable for trading at that time, and way better than Bitcoin, obviously. But like nothing was ever really built from the ground up for trading. Like if you showed a trader Solana and said like, "Hey, does this work for you for low latency trading?" Like the answer is no. Like like every big centralized trading venue has like colo and a couple 5 millisecond block like matching, for example, and it just wasn't, and like cancel priority and all these things that traders need, and it just wasn't built with that in mind. And so we started to think about like, hey, what if we built an L1 that was kind of built with modern trading in mind from the ground up, and that was the idea for Fogo.
So when did it first come into your mind? Like what kind of year, what kind of date?
It was probably around 2024 when we started really thinking about it. And at that point, I thought, hey, like this would be interesting to an existing blockchain. Like I thought, this could kind of be like an extension. But I didn't get a lot of interest when I went out and talked to people. I think at that point, like before Hyperliquid, like this idea that you needed global consensus and thousands of validators spread out across the world, and no colo because that's unfair. That was kind of the thinking, and so there wasn't a lot of openness to this idea. Like, hey, you can build a blockchain that was suitable for low latency modern trading that had colo, and the end result is actually it's going to be more fair to the retail guy that can't colo because like they're just going to get better liquidity and pricing, and they're not going to get front run. um, and I credit Hyperliquid for kind of realizing that and going against the grain and like executing on that first. And so we had already started building Fogo when we saw Hyperliquid. And when we started building Fogo, it was like, hey, we just know that we can, take the validators, colo them, put them closer to price discovery, whatever that asset is, whether that's, perps on Binance as kind of price discovery, or whether that's when we're thinking forward to RWA. And we want to be closer to the TradFi exchanges where price discovery is happening on commodities, for example, or tokenized securities. So the thinking that we can like build this blockchain that was more suited for trading started. And then once I didn't get a lot of interest from the existing blockchains, I just decided to build it myself. And the first person I thought of was Mike at Pyth.
So obviously I'm not going to ask who you went and approached, but what was the kind of pushback that people they're just basically pushing back these other blockchains or projects, basically saying it's just not fair, or they want this multi around the world slower consensus mechanism? That was their main pushback.
Yeah, I think it was twofold. I think, look, like people in this space have, just certain ideology, and they have certain visions. Like, if you want to create what you think is a more fair system where everybody receives information at the same time, then that means you have to slow everybody down to like the slowest participant on the network. And that's fine. That's cool. It might work for a lot of use cases, but it just has proven that it doesn't work for trading. And so, we come from a different world where we know that if you give an advantage to the people that can add the most positive value in terms of liquidity, then they add better liquidity, and the end like retail taker benefits from that. So it's just like two ways of thinking. And at that point, people didn't think like that. And I also saw like even in early days of crypto with centralized exchanges, they were less likely to give advantages to like the liquidity providers because of that. Like they had this idea of fairness. But I think people are coming around to like, yeah, you can actually give a more fair experience by giving advantages to those who can provide more value in terms of liquidity and deeper liquidity and tighter spreads.
Yeah, Hyperliquid's managed to just organically make that well known, I guess. It's a
Yeah.
ripe area for disruption.
Yep.
So you found Mike from Pyth, and then who else did you need to assemble for this team?
So the first thing is like I didn't have like an engineering team to build this. So and I had known that Pyth had already forked Solana. They were running Pythnet. And it had to be like super performant because of all of the market data that went through that. So so it was like an obvious fit. Like when I called up Mike, I was like, hey, like it seems like you guys are already kind of running an L1. I mean, you call it an app chain, but you've already like built this thing which could be an L1 if you opened it up. And how are you thinking about like the evolution of Pythnet? And yeah, he was like, look, we have to keep evolving it. It has to keep being more performant, like if we want to stay competitive for Pyth. And I was kind of like, look, you got to imagine that others will find the innovations of Pythnet interesting and valuable, especially if you're scaling it more. So like, why not open it up and make it its own L1 where others can take advantage of all the innovation? He's like, I'm open. And so that kind of started the relationship with Pythnet, and we were lucky as Douro Labs has, they had the engineering resources, they have marketing, they have kind of everything, and I think they're the best at it, like that I've seen. They're just really professionals, like they're all rock stars. Mike does a really good job at managing that. And so I couldn't find a better partner, especially since it was just kind of me. I didn't have a team. And so so that partnership is kind of what started it. And obviously, they were very committed to Pyth. So it took them a little while to figure out, like, okay, how do we ensure that we can like take this on, but still, like give what we need to Pyth and like tie these together. And it's such a logical fit. Like this trading experience that we're building on Fogo like doesn't work without Pyth, and more specifically Pyth laser. So the 1 millisecond off-chain oracle. And so like building that together and coloing Pyth laser is like super important for like what Doug at Ambient is building. Because like he needs, if he's gonna provide this like really low latency experience, he needs to make sure that the market data is very close to the source and coloed right next to them. And so yeah, it's this whole package is coming together nicely.
So how did you find Doug from Ambient Finance?
On Twitter. So I think I forget what I searched for, but I saw a tweet from him like, it might have been in 2024. But you can look back. But it said basically, the opportunity is for somebody to take Fire Dancer and deploy it in a more performant way and like blow everybody else out of the water. And so I DM'd him. I'm like, Doug, like I saw this tweet and I didn't know him at all. And DM'd him and I'm like, hey, I saw this and we happen to be thinking about it. And so at that point, like I had just gone on Twitter and I think I had like 100 followers. So for him to like even respond to me and see my message was pretty interesting. It was all destiny. And we got on the phone in like 10 minutes. He's like, yeah, this is intriguing. Let's keep exploring. And I introduced him to Douro and then probably the second call he was in, and we had Tarun was a common friend, and Tarun had invested in Fogo early on through Robot. And so Tarun kind of made a bit of a warm intro after I got the, I cold reached out to him and told him the story. Tarun kind of stepped in and laid, laid the whole thing out, how he thought this was a good fit. And at that point, Doug had already built an AMM, but was already looking to kind of do something a bit different. He wasn't super happy with how the L2 strategy that he was kind of tied to worked out. And so he was already, I think, looking at Solana and it was already thinking about a perp stacks. So this was just a perfect fit for him.
Yeah, I saw that Doug had tried to go onto other chains that had a whole lot of activity like Blast and Scroll, but unfortunately they didn't keep their activity up. Naturally, you follow the trend, which was the L2 route, but now he's following the logic that the SVM makes more sense. So this is a good fit for Fogo.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty important. It's pretty important to like whatever you choose, that you believe that it can attract like a community and activity. And so like there can be great products. Like I've seen this before, like really great products just built on the wrong chain and just suffer. And it's like, wow, if you had like Solana is a great example. Like most people, if they had built their product on Solana, like they do really have successful apps. They do gain from the network effect. So we want to, like, look, we're looking at that and we want to be the other SVM choice where that's true.
So you've also gone ahead and established the Fogo Foundation. Who's running that?
Right. So I had mentioned that I had worked with Jimmy Riley and Martine Bond when I was at multiple places. So JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and State Street, Currenex. And so when we were thinking about who is going to run the foundation and kind of this next wave of institutions and institutional products like that, we wanted people that like had experience there and knew how to talk to the people that we're going to need to talk to. And we were kind of covered on the crypto native stuff with like a lot of the resources that Douro is providing on this. in terms of community management and marketing. And so I reached out to them, and it was a bit of a leap of faith because they were very much still in the TradFi world. But I think like anybody in TradFi, like if you're intellectually curious and you love innovation, like you're gonna be like paying attention to crypto and potentially involved. And that was kind of the case with them. Like it wasn't like they hadn't been following the space. And also Martine had been actually involved at State Street with digital asset initiatives. And so when I reached out to them, like and told them the story, I'm like, hey, I think it'd be great if you guys could come in. Jimmy as the head of foundation, Martine as director. Um, they were super excited, and they kind of dropped everything. And from very early on, even without knowing much about Fogo and like being that involved in crypto, like they could see certain things and like gave great advice. Like, yeah, you maybe want to think about this. um, it's because they have so much experience. And so I'm really confident that we have the right leadership at the foundation. It's a bit different than what others have, the routes that others have gone with more like crypto people. But I think for this next wave, this is going to really differentiate us and put us in a position to be able to do like really interesting partnership structures, BD deals with this new wave of entrants that are really kind of places we all came from.
Because essentially, you're building Fogo for traders by traders, and the crypto part between Douro Labs and yourself and Doug, you've got that sorted. And so now the other side is getting those institutions on board to grow this faster than your peers, I guess we could say.
Yeah, we're fighting from behind, and so we need to do things different. Um, we don't want to just be, a lesser version of what's out there. And so I think right now we're in kind of, build mode and getting some foundational attention. But after launch, I think we go into deal mode where we start going out to like who are the real players that have captive users that now want to get involved with on-chain activity, and like how can we do interesting partnerships with them that give access to these Fogo apps and dexes to their captive users, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship. um, and so so that's going to be our focus, and I think that's how we're going to fast track adoption with like real users. Like I'm not that interested in starting from zero and like having our own marketing team and trying to go after and capture users and traders like directly from zero. I think that's just not really a smart strategy for somebody like us. And I don't think there's many other teams out there that have this experience in doing these kind of big BD deals with CEOs of major companies that mean like real integrations that bring on like serious activity. So that's what we're going to be focused on after launch.
So essentially, what could happen is, of course, the general crypto person could go and use a blockchain with their wallet, but then these big players could have their own applications that their own clientele use and connect to Fogo to execute trades, something along those lines,
I
potentially.
think that's how it's already going. I mean, the Phantom integration with Hyperliquid is kind of that, right? When you go and put a leverage perps trade on Phantom, like you don't even know that you're using Hyperliquid in the background. It's
Yeah.
all, they've engineered that out, and that makes for an awesome experience when you're on Phantom and you just want to short something. And that's how it's going. And like I credit Hyperliquid for builder codes and enabling that. And also Phantom for like thinking about this really cool vision. And then we're even seeing like, with these USDH proposals, we're even seeing offers from the PayPals and Venmos of the world to have an integration with Hyperliquid. Like, that's another kind of integration where in the background, you're using this. It's maybe a faster, cheaper experience for users to settle. But they don't even know it's really Hyperliquid in the background. And so I think this is like the real future. Not just trying to like get users to your branded platforms. It's these integrations, and it's kind of goes back to when from our FX days, like we called it white label, and that was really how you scaled up like a foreign exchange matching engine and exchange. You went out to brokers and others offering FX or cross-border payments platforms, and you allowed them to lean on your liquidity and do what they did best, which was like go manage, like get clients, manage the clients, and send them, keep them on, and that just and then you have this kind of liquidity begets liquidity on your matching engine because you just get more and more of that stuff, and that makes the liquidity and the order book more interesting for everybody. And we want to follow that same playbook.
So Phantom partnering with Hyperliquid, that made perfect sense. It was a match made in heaven. And that's great that you're going to be doing a similar approach with your partnerships and Fogo Chain. It's novel. It's novel in the crypto space. I like it because ultimately for me, someone that does a lot of content, like UX matters, and the crypto UX is not known to be amazing at all. It's starting to get better, but it's not as good as your Web 2 counterparties.
Right. And leave the UX up to like the experts.
Yeah.
Let them manage that and be in front of like new trends. And then, if we're behind the scenes, I'm completely fine with that.
Thanks for coming on the episode, Sags. It's been a pleasure. You can follow Sags on his Twitter. He tweets regularly. You can also follow Fogo Chain on their Twitter as well. I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Thank you, Seb. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.